Adam Rittenberg of ESPN did a power ranking, a futures power ranking of quarterbacks. Not quarterbacks right now, but what quarterbacks rooms will look like in the future. And
Wait, so
somehow,
this is not just Nico. This is the whole room. This is Merklinger as well.
yes. And somehow, in a futures power ranking with Nico Iamaleava, a generational quarterback, and Jake Merklinger, a 4-star quarterback. And by the way, there is this 5-star recruit that's going to be joining the room next year in George McIntyre in 2025. Tennessee is number 12. That's right, guys. You heard it. Number 12. No, look, we're not personally attacking Adam Rittenberg. I actually like him. He came on our show one time. I think you like him too. He's a good guy. He'll address it head on if we ask him about it a lot of times. But I don't know how Tennessee's number 12 with that room.
No, I don't either. And to me, that sounds, if you're doing a futures list, it seems to me to be a little bit out of whack when, I mean, really, shouldn't Texas and Tennessee be in the top 5 because they got an Arch Manning and a Quinn Ewers at Texas, and you got a Nico and Merklinger at Tennessee? To me, by definition, if it's a futures ranking, they should be on that. Now, I will say this too. Smoky Mountain Red said there is hate for Tennessee, and it's clear as can be. We were the first very vocal fan base on social media, and that has rubbed a lot of people wrong. I used to think when people said that ESPN didn't like Tennessee, that honestly, a lot of Tennessee fans were crazy, because I think that ESPN does like Tennessee. I think they're treated well when they come to Knoxville. I think that the backdrop of Neyland Stadium is a positive for them. I think it brings in more viewers. But now, after the social media, a comment that Smoky Mountain Red says, I'm completely changing my philosophy on that. I believe beyond the shadow of a doubt, because of you, Vol Twitter, and I'm saying this as a compliment, don't get insulted, Caleb, but I believe that, yeah, this program is one that a lot of people in the national media don't like. Now, I can't tell you that anybody's ever told me that. And Caleb and I talked to everybody and their brother at SEC Media Days last year. Nobody ever said, now, okay, I will say this. I will say this. Some people that have covered Tennessee and gone on to cover other teams and some national media have said, man, that Vol Twitter and that fan base is pretty crazy on social media. That has happened at least 4 or 5 times. And I just always assume that it's the same with every fan base, right? You have the 10% of people that take it maybe a little too seriously and attack people on Twitter. But maybe Tennessee's different from other schools.
So I'm going to get to that, but let me first steelman Adam Rittenberg real quick in this ranking.
Steelman, what does that mean?
It's the opposite of straw man. I'm going to make the best case for why. I'm going to say what his best would be to do it, as opposed, when you straw man, you accuse somebody of taking the worst case possible, so then you can argue that as if they ever, even though they never made that argument to begin with.
I just would have gone Iron Man.
Okay, anyway. Well, steel man. So I'm going to steel man Adam Rittenberg's argument, because I was very critical because he did have Texas at number 2 because you brought him up with Arch Manning, and last year he had Tennessee at number 8, which how do you drop Tennessee from 8 to 12? He does place value on returning starters, and Tennessee does not have anybody that has started a college football game on the roster at quarterback right now or in the future. So, for instance, like Georgia is number 4. You can't like Carson Beck's on the team, and Carson Beck is a future star and has already started. So that's fair, right? To have Georgia number 4 with Carson Beck there.
Sure.
And Texas has Arch Manning for the future, but they also have Quinn Ewers for now. So I'm going to steelman Adam Rittenberg in that. I just think even without a returning starter, I think Nico's so generational, you should still have Tennessee higher. As far as does ESPN or national media hate Tennessee, there's 2 stories to go off here. I thought they didn't like Tennessee in the 90s for a couple of reasons, actually. One, it was very true. ESPN and ABC, Dave, were very resentful that the SEC struck that deal with CBS. Is that fair to say in the 90s? 2, and more importantly, I know this, the people working at ABC, ESPN at the time, Craig James, Lee Corso, those type of guys, they loved Johnny Majors. They loved him. They went back with him, and they had a big problem with Philip Fulmer for how Fulmer took the job away from Johnny Majors. So their anti-Tennessee bias came from their anti-Philip Fulmer bias. And also, I'm just going to say it if you're a media guy, and Dave, you know this personally, Philip Fulmer is the worst interview possible. You get nothing from him at all. It's the same 5 quotes every day, right?
I think Josh Heupel's the worst interview, to be honest with you.
The Heupel's a terrible interview. I agree, but think about Tennessee in the 90s for a minute. You got Fulmer following Majors. Majors was gold for an interview, right? You were never not going to walk away with an epic quote from Johnny Majors if you interviewed him.
Agreed. And you usually just had to ask him about Philip Fulmer after that all happened, and you get an epic interview. But let me ask you, let's stop you on one thing with the Lee Corso thing. I don't doubt that that's the case, but back in the day, you would call Lee Corso on his business phone at the pencil factory. Did you know he worked at the pencil factory when he worked at ESPN making pencils? And literally number 2 pencils. And you would call him and he would just pick up. And also, he would always do sports talk with me and John Wilkerson and Jimmy Himes. So I didn't know that he didn't dislike Tennessee. Is that out there somewhere, or are you?
Well, people felt that because from about 98 to 2001, he had a string where he picked against Tennessee. He picked against Tennessee every major college game day event during the 98 season when they won it all. And so there was that. So there was just this feeling that he didn't like Tennessee. And he and Craig James in 92, when Majors was fired, you can go, there's a clip of it on YouTube right now. They lambasted Tennessee for firing Johnny Majors nationally. They were very, very, they were the 2 people, like Lee Corso called it a very sad day in college football that a man who gave his life to Tennessee could be forced out because of one bad month. That was his phrase, missing every other detail that went into that firing, by the way. And
how, in retrospect, how inaccurate are we with coaches in predicting coaches and how they will do? I mean, if you had a pick and say, I thought this was a good hire and it worked out to be the case versus you were wrong, what's your batting average there? Sports Treasures also, besides football, it carries some fantastic baseball memorabilia. Speaking of batting average, carrying over 5 million Sports Treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia. Daily updates. Follow at Sports Treasures TN. Sports Treasures TN. Again, they're in North Knoxville. They're awesome. Sports Treasures. Caleb, getting back to your point, I don't think we know the majority of it at the time if a coach is the right fit. I like how we throw things out there. I don't like the Kalen DeBoer hire. I think you kind of do. Would I bet more than $100 on it? No. I mean, because I thought the 3 biggest locks for great coaches was Urban Meyer at Florida, Urban Meyer at Ohio State, even though I don't like him morally. I thought Nick Saban, and then wait till you hear my last one. I thought Nick Saban was a lock at Alabama when he went from the Dolphins, right? So I'm 3 for 3 now, right? I thought that Dan Mullen would be the other guy that was a lock fit for the University of Florida. And boy, was I darn wrong.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that with Dan Mullen. I thought so too. What we're starting to learn, and we're seeing this with Billy Napier now, and there's a lot to criticize with Billy Napier, and I don't want to pick on him because we saw this with coaches at Tennessee.
He's very detail-oriented.
Oh, yes, that's true. What I'm learning, and by the way, I thought Dabo Swinney was going to be a bust of a hire. I thought that was a terrible hire, and it turned out to work out.
I did too.
What we're learning with college football, half of the success of a coach is just if they're at the program at the right time. And what I mean by that is, Dave, Philip Fulmer took over Tennessee at the right time with their recruiting budget and ways they were ahead of the curve. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Like if Fulmer takes over Tennessee in 2010, how long does he last?
If he takes over in 2010, I'm having trouble following your logic here. Why would he take over in 2010?
I'm saying theoretically, if Philip Fulmer was the age he took over in 92, if he was that age in 2010, so the same Philip Fulmer, the personality, the intellect, everything, the 42-year-old Philip Fulmer takes over Tennessee in the shape it was in 2010, rather than 1992, how long does Philip Fulmer last?
well, he wouldn't be able to grind at that age that he did in recruiting.
I'm saying he's 42 years old in 2010.
Right. Oh,
theoretically. He's 42 in 2010. He's the same age he was when he took the Tennessee job anyway. But it's 2010, not 1992. Just think the shape Tennessee is in. How does Philip Fulmer? Or a better way to say that.
No, I see where. No, he does. Oh, so you're saying after he's destroyed the program?
No. Okay. Tennessee is in the same. Okay, let's do it this way. Dave, Tennessee is the same caliber job when Fulmer takes over in 1992 that it was in 2010. How do you think Fulmer does?
Not well. I think he inherited the heck of a program. I think a lot of guys would do poorly in 2010.
That's where I'm at. That's why it's hard to predict. I wanted to get to with respect though with the ESPN.
I don't understand that now. All right, let's say.
So I'm saying it's about the program as much as the coach, whether or not a coach is successful.
Yeah, no, it does matter. I'll tell you what, if he came back, if he ran the program in the ground and then somehow came back as the athletic director, that'd be weird, wouldn't it? Wait, he did.
Okay, it's very true. By the way, I wanted to get to that because this is the reason ESPN, I think, even hates Tennessee with the SEC ties.
That's crazy.
Because this is the real truth. By the way, because the 97 Heisman Trophy, that did have a lot to do with anti-Philip Fulmer bias. It had to do with them over-promoting Peyton Manning. And it had to do with the trainer incident. I think that had a big role in it, don't you think? In 96 and...
Well, all of those may have been little factors, but the biggest factor is that ESPN wanted people to watch the Heisman ceremony like it mattered.
And you've told me don't...
They came up with Big Ten people. Like, you remember Ron Dane? You remember...
yeah.
They came up with dude after dude.
I want to get to 2017, but just real quick question on that. Didn't you tell me, do you think that with the way, I've heard this and tell me if it's true, with the way Charles Woodson acted the week of the Heisman ceremony, a lot of Charles Woodson voters regretted their vote?
Actually, it was the Heisman ceremony. It was also the Walter Camp ceremony. He was there, and he demanded 4 first-class tickets, and they typically give out 2 coach tickets. He was very demanding. Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of issues in the awards ceremony. I don't even think that's the sad part about it, is I don't even think that Charles Woodson cared that much about the Heisman. I think he just thought it was a fun thing to make a run at, and that's why he did the pose, and he didn't think he was going to win it. But to Peyton Manning and Tennessee, it meant everything. That's the saddest part about that whole story, isn't it?
That is the saddest part of the whole story. And so getting to now, I think the reason they hate Tennessee now is because Tennessee, yes, Vol Twitter, there was love for Tennessee from about 2010 to 2015 when Tennessee wasn't as relevant. But now that they're relevant, you can see just how savage Vol Twitter can be. Vol Twitter nixed a hire of a head coach.
That doesn't happen, does it? Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
And by the way, media members loved that hire because he's an access coach. And access journalists sports media is littered with access journalists, just like political media is, which is to say they'll run cover for a coach if the coach gives them interviews. And Greg Schiano was a master at that.
I preferred the opposite way. Fear me, and you will do the interview.
And Vol Twitter is that way, by the way. And most of and you know this, Dave, most of Knoxville media is that way. Anybody you worked with, was there any of the people we have on our show this week? None of them are access journalists. Jimmy doesn't need them to come talk to him. They need to talk to Jimmy, honestly, more than Jimmy needs them.
No, you're right.